Our new best friend is the dart. Learn how and why we will always want to include them in our clothing today on Fit to Stitch. Most of us have wanted or felt a beautiful piece of fabric and have wanted to take it and do something with it. For many of us, we've simply made a pillow or something very simple. Many of us, especially as women, feel that we could never have enough clothes and we've wanted to sew, but just haven't quite figured out how to take this rectangular piece of cloth and turn it into something that would work on our bodies. My name is Peggy Sagers, and I want you to share my passion of fabric and patterns, and I want to teach you my vision of how that rectangular fabric becomes a beautiful bodice on each of you. So let me make a little analogy for you this morning. I want to start with anytime you go to build a house, you have what we call our architect. And our architect goes through and builds up these beautiful plans and lays everything out as to how it should be, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have our engineer, and our engineer takes those plans and makes sure that they're functional, that the structures are correct, and that everything falls into place. And then he passes those on to our builder. And our builder makes sure the proper equipment is used and the proper materials, and he puts the whole plan into practice. You know, we do that in sewing also. We have what we call the designer, and the designer is our architect. And then we have what we call our pattern maker. And our pattern maker takes the creation of the designer and maps it out and measures it out and puts it into play so that the pattern will be just right for our body. And then we come along with the sample maker, and the sample maker is actually the one who stitches it on the sewing machine just as the builder puts those lumber together to make that house. What I want you to understand is so many of us have learned so much about the sewing machine. And what we fail to recognize is that we could know lots and lots and lots, and we could be on the sewing machine for 40, 50 years and not understand anything about a pattern. Many of my customers have said to me, but I've been sewing for 40 years, I should know this stuff. Well, no, you shouldn't, and you probably won't if you sewed another 40 years. What we need to do is understand the rules of patterns and how they apply to us. They're simple rules, they're easy rules, and once we learn them, they don't change, they stay the same. And so the good news is once we learn them, we'll always own them, and we'll always be able to get our concept over and over and right, just the way we want it. So let's go to the pillowcases, and we're gonna learn to take these pillowcases and turn them into bodices. So first I'm going to just cut the top off of this pillowcase because every garment that we make has to go over our head. So I'm going to make that opening big enough to where we literally can pull it down. And to make all things equal, I'm actually going to do it to this pillowcase also, because even if we literally wear, I call them decorated pillowcases, we still don't wear them stuck on the top of our head. We at least pull them down on our shoulder, and we wear them down on our shoulders. So here we have both pillowcases. We've cut out a little neckline. We're going to do that a little bit better. And we've got them pulled down over our head. So the next thing we would do if we would drape any bodice is we would measure the angle of the shoulder, and we would simply drape the angle of our shoulders. And because our shoulders are all a little different, we experience a few fitting problems with that, but we'll talk about that later. Basically, we're going to drape that, and we're going to cut off anything that's extra. Boom, boom. Now, for those of us who wear, I call them decorated pillowcases, but all we mean is shirts that just don't really have any shape to them, or maybe jackets that don't have any shape to them. They all have shoulder shapes. So we're going to go ahead and drape this one also. And we're going to bring it down to match the shoulders. Just like that. And again, what are we going to do? We're going to cut off all that extra. So we're going to cut that off there, And we're going to cut that off there. And everybody who sews knows that those seams actually go to the inside. But for right now, we're just going to leave them out so we can see. We always get a neckline, and a neckline is drawn down. It's actually kind of a square. What a neckline does is it marks the width of our neck, and it marks the depth of our neck. The width of our neck is what we call fit. The depth of our neck is what we call styling. So we're going to cover that a little bit later, but right now, I simply am going to cut it out so that this poor little mannequin doesn't strangle herself. And we'll put it to the side, and we'll do that again on both of them. But this is where the differences really start to take place, because if you notice what I have is I have the length and I have the width.